Right. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Contrarians. We have a cool, neat panel discussion for you tonight with our awesome Patreon subscribers. I do want to give a shout out to our Patreon members. And I said this we just had a recording the other day, but we're almost at 5,000 subscribers. And a lot of that has to do with you folks joining these chats, bringing your expertise, bringing your personalities and everything that you've done to support the channel. Has meant a lot to myself and Martin and Nick, and we all appreciate that a lot. And we wouldn't be we're almost at 5,000 subscribers, and we wouldn't be there without everybody who's here tonight and everybody who backs the channel on Patreon. So we totally appreciate that and thank everybody very much. If you want to join these chats, you can join us over at Patreon at any tier. You can jump on these chats. We also have a Ko-Fi and we have a TeePublic. Link is in the description. Other than that, we're just going to have some fun tonight. We're going to kind of go around, and everybody here has at least 3 albums from the 1977, which was voted on in a Patreon poll, that they're going to talk about what their 3 favorite albums are, and maybe a couple of honorable mentions. So you might get a few more from each. But we're going to go around. Each person's going to go 3, 2, 1, and then your couple of honorable mentions. So we've got a awesome looking panel tonight, and I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody's choices are. And I have a feeling that there might be some crossover with some people's picks, but why don't we get the ball rolling? And let's start with Ryan. Ryan, what's your number 3 pick for favorite 1977 releases?
So my number 3 today is going to be Farewell to Kings by Rush. Not only is this one of my favorite albums of 1977, it's also probably my favorite Rush album. I think that they developed their sound a lot on this one. They learned to make a couple shorter songs like Closer to the Heart, Cinderella Man, Madrigal. But they also had some amazing epics on here like Xanadu and Cygnus X1, which is definitely one of my all-time favorite Rush songs. It delves in the prog metal with how heavy it gets at times. I think that it's just a really interesting album. It sounds great. Closer to the Heart's a fantastic single. I mean, that was kind of a little bit of a risky move for the band to have something that was so like commercial and mainstream sounding, but it also holds the integrity of the band and their intelligence too. So I think it's just a really fantastic album overall. Great album cover too. You just can't go wrong with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Rand, how about you? What's your number 3?
Yeah. Thanks for doing that. Number 3, I'm going to go with Kansas Left Point of No Return. I almost said the wrong thing. I love this album. Dust in the Wind. Everybody thinks that Dust in the Wind either made this album or destroys it. It depends on what kind of fan you are of Kansas. I love the song. I don't need to hear it every single day on the radio, but it's a beautiful tune. But the rest of this album is just off the chart prog rock. I mean, it's just a great. Starts out with the title track, Point of No Return, and then Paradox, and it just doesn't let up. It's such a good album. I can't say enough about it. I love it. It's one of my favorite albums of 1977, and I've seen the band at least 5 times, I think. Yeah, I love Kansas.
Thanks, Rand. Andee, what's your number 3?
Okay, I'm going to fly the flag for New York City. My number 3 is Suicide, the debut album from Suicide. 77 is such a flashpoint for so many kinds of music, and punk rock was really flaring up in New York City, and you had CBGB's thing was, just flowering. Blondie had their first album in 77. You had, bands from London putting out their first punk rock albums, but Suicide was kind of a weird outlier. They didn't sound like punk rock. They were kind of punk rock in spirit, but what a strange template for a band. You've got Martin Rev, who's playing these chintzy organ sounds and these canned little beatbox loops, and Alan Vega doing this kind of warped, psychotic Elvis kind of frontman thing, really confrontational shows. Just the first album is, most people consider it far and away their best, because it's really kind of just so shocking, and where a lot of people sort of criticize punk as being a little bit regressive, and kind of musically conservative. Suicide was really quite forward thinking, really influential on bands in the 80s like Jesus and Mary Chain and all the industrial rock that kind of came up in the 80s. I think everybody was listening to Suicide. So yeah, that's my number 3, Suicide, self-titled.
Thanks, Andy. Joe, you're next. What's your number 3? And by the way, appropriate shirt for tonight. Forgot to mention
Taylor
that.
Hawkins, rest in peace. Yeah, this was super tough. So I'm gonna go number 3, Queen, News of the World. What a great year for music. Just so many great bands, and this is when I really started diving deep into in the hard rock metal, and as Andy said, punk as well. But yeah, you go We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. Aside from that being played to death, that's 2 great songs. Sheer Heart Attack is just awesome. All Dead, All Dead. Spread Your Wings is a beautiful song. Fright from the Inside is a great Roger Taylor song. Get Down, Make Love is just really nasty. It's Late, the 10th song in the album by Brian May. It's a great tune. So it's a tough choice because there's so many great albums that came out, but my number 3 is Queen, News of the World.
Thanks, Joe. And handsome fellow Matt over there wearing that beautiful t-shirt. What's your number 377?
Thank you, Marco. So my number 3 choice is Steely Dan, Asia. Not a contrarian choice, and it's really kind of well documented how critically acclaimed, and especially for music nerds like us, that album is. And there was that classic albums episode that really digs in deep into how it was made and bringing all these A-list studio musicians together to realize the vision of Fagen and Becker. And, it's kind of a standard for audiophiles to listen to that album when they've got new hi-fi equipment and see how good your new system sounds. But the one thing that I'll add is it's also a great lo-fi sounding album. I've heard, for example, Peg way more times on the radio in a terrible, car speakers, or even just, streaming online or something like that with my computer monitors. And it sounds great that way as well. And it was a really commercially successful album. It's double platinum. It had 3 top 40 hits on it. And that just is so hilarious to me. Like there's, if you were to describe it, these are not, it's jazz rock with jazz chords. Donald Fagen does not exactly have a pop friendly voice. And the lyrics are really subversive and sarcastic. For speaking of Peg, it's like from a James Ellroy novel or something. So it totally does not make sense for it to be a hit. And then you still hear on the radio all the time, kind of created yacht rock and things that are much more commercial and friendly to the masses, but also great for us music nerds. That's my number 3 choice.
Thanks, Matt. John C., you're next.
Okay, so I kind of approached this a little differently. I decided to go back to 1977 and go back in real time and say, what was I listening to in 1977 that's still sticking with me today? There's a lot of great albums that came out in 1977, but a lot of those I didn't discover in 1977, much later on. So I had to go back a little bit. Now, granted, I was only about 7 years old, but yeah, thank goodness for a sister who's sister and brother who are 15 and 13 years older than me. So I got exposed to a lot of good stuff. One of those things, the first Foreigner album. I don't have a show and tell, but the first Foreigner album, thank you, Christian. We get graced with the voice of Lou Gramm and those songs, the Feels Like the First Time and Cold as Ice, long way from home, Star Rider, Head Knocker, so many good songs on that first album. I remember my brother and sister listening to that one quite a bit. made a big impression on me. I still listen to a lot of that album today. So that's going to be my number 3.
Awesome. Christian, go ahead. What's your number 3, 1977?
1977 is kind of a weird year for me. I kind of see it as the forgotten middle child of 76 and 78. A lot of my favorite albums are from those 2 years. Like Rainbow, for instance, you have 76 and 78. You have On Stage in 77, which I don't see it as that great of a live album. You have Kiss, Rock and Roll Over, and Destroyer in 76, and then Love Gun in 77. Not a huge fan of Love Gun. You have Boston's debut in 76, and then you have Van Halen's debut in 78. But for my number 3, I picked Judas Priest. Again, I like these 2 albums better. But Sin After Sin, I don't have it to show, but incredible album. It moved the world of metal in such a strong forward direction. Very diverse. There you go. Dissident Aggressor, an amazing song. One of the probably could be the heaviest song at that point in time. Yeah, Sinner, KK Downing's that like shrieking guitar sound. Just a great album. I think it's a little inconsistent compared to the other 2, but just a great album. Such a phenomenal album with a lot of great highs. So yeah, that's my number 3.
Cool. And our resident music nut, John, you're next. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, guys. It's great to be here. Matt, excellent choice for your number 3. That was my number 2, but fortunately I had a few backup plans. My choice is the 3rd album by Crosby, Stills and Nash, which is called CSN. And this was the last album that they did where all 3 of the guys did all the singing on it. After this, they brought in a lot of backup singers. All 3 members of the band wrote great songs on this one. If we were to go in order, David Crosby has the opener with Shadow Captain. There's fantastic harmonies on that. Carried Away is a wonderful piano ballad. In My Dreams is another great song. The songs from Stephen Stills got a little more airplay. Dark Star got played a lot on classic rock radio back in the day. You don't really hear it anymore, but the bass line on that is excellent and the vocals were great. Fair Game was the single that went to number 43. It's a very bitter but creative lyric on it. He was writing it about his marriage. It wasn't going so well at that point. For Graham Nash, he had the big hit here called Just a Song Before I Go. And he wrote that song in 15 minutes because he was on vacation in an island and then he was ready to leave. And someone said to Graham, can you write a song before you go? And he just came up with that song. And it was their biggest hit. It's a soft rock staple. Other great songs on here are Cathedral, which Graham Nash also wrote. And he wrote that about having an acid trip on his 32nd birthday. That's a very dramatic song. Other great songs, Cold Rain, See the Changes. I'm sorry, I already mentioned In My Dreams, Cold Rain, but this is an excellent album. And it's my 2nd favorite album by Crosby, Stills and Nash next to their self-titled debut. And it's my number 3.
Awesome. And starting to get hot in here because there's another good looking fellow down there with a nice shirt on. Reed, take it away. It's your number 3.
All right, so 77, I had to go back, do some research and find out what albums came out that year. Truly an embarrassment of riches for fantastic albums. 76, 77 is really when I started listening to music. And I know that as a panel, we all, for some reason, have this kind of gentleman's agreement, apparently, to avoid live albums. But I had to go with my number 3 pick being Alive 2. And Alive 2 has the 5 studio tracks are my favorite Kiss songs from the 70s, bar none. I was listening to them again before this chat. They're heavy, they're melodic, they're just fantastic. And yes, that includes the cover of the Dave Clark 5. But when I was a kid, I was 9 years old when this came out, and I just used to stare at that cover in the record store, right? And it was crazy and evil looking, and my dad wouldn't buy it for me. But I had a friend down the road whose parents bought it for him, and we just listened to that album obsessively. So it was like the first album that I ever got that the cover dragged me in, and then the music just sealed the deal. So Alive 2 by Kiss.
Cool. Pontus, what's your number 3?
Well done, Reed.
This is-
Rocket Ride.
Yeah. It was so hard. I've been changing records throughout the show when we're filming, but I number 3, I go with Styx, Grand Illusion. Fantastic album. Rand had my number 3, original number 3, Kansas. And to think that Styx and Kansas toured together in '76, you could see these bands together. The one, Kansas on the Left Overture tour and them doing Crystal Ball, and inspiring Styx to write this material on here is just fantastic. Come Sail Away, Miss America, Castle Walls. I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, the singing of Tommy Shaw, the playing of JY and the brothers and Dennis Young. It's just a classic album. Grand Illusion, Styx.
Awesome. Now we're back at the start again. Ryan, what's your number 2?
My number 2 today is going to be Asia by Steely Dan. I know it's already got mentioned, but I love this album to death. It's one of my favorites of all time. As we talked about, it's a sonically amazing album. The production on it's nuts. It honestly like inspired me so much as a musician myself, of like a new standard that I wanted to like try to reach for myself, like, you know, with recording and stuff. I just couldn't hear myself record something shitty anymore. Like it just had to be better, and that's largely because of this album. The songs on it are just super consistent the entire time. I mean, Black Cow is such an amazing opener. That bass line is fantastic. You know, it was sampled later on for Uptown Baby or whatever that song's called, but you know, just an amazing track. The chorus on it gives me chills every single time, like all the backup singing and stuff. It's just so beautiful. Asia is an amazing song. I mean, Steve Gadd is on it, and he's one of my favorite drummers of all time. Those drum solos in that song give me chills. They're just so chaotic, and then you have the synths in the background, just adding such a like tense and kind of like beautiful but also dark atmosphere. You got Deacon's Blues, which is one of my favorite lyrics by the band. Kind of talks about like fantasizing being like a jazz musician and stuff. It's something that really resonates with me, because I mean, that's something I've kind of always dreamed of myself. But it also has an air of irony to it, kind of like, this is kind of like my dream, but it also isn't that great of an existence either. Like, I'll drink too much and die behind the wheel and stuff. Like, it's a really cool lyric. Peg's a super catchy song. Some fantastic like Michael McDonald backup singing on that one. Yeah, Home at Last, which is a great stomping kind of song. Great piano playing on that one. Just overall fantastic. I Got the News is a fantastic song, and Josie is super funky. I love that song. It's super catchy. Just, you know, one of the highlight albums in my entire music journey. So many amazing musicians on it. I mean, you've got like Chuck Rainey, you've got Steve Gadd, like I said, Michael McDonald. You have what's his name? Larry Carlton. You know, he plays some of the best guitar solos of all time on these Steely Dan albums, and he's on here rocking it. Just fantastic overall.
Great. Rand, number 2.
I don't know if I was allowed to do this or not, but I decided I would. Live album, Gentle Giant, Playing the Fool. This was the tour that I saw him the first and only time I saw him. And they opened for Yes at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. This is an amazing album. I mean, the talent on this thing is incredible. I won't name up all the tunes, but they tend to hang around the Freehand album. They do a lot of Octopus. They do some of the interview on here. It's just incredible. I can't rave about Gentle Giant enough, you know. This was for 1977. What's such a treat. Such a treat. Oh, and this is for Christian real quick. I just happen to have it sitting on a chair. There's no vinyl in it or nothing. I like the cover. So I gave the record store 50 cents and they said I could have the cover.
Nice. Yeah, live albums are cool. If anybody wants to pick a live album, that's cool. Compilation.
All right.
Movie soundtrack.
A-Tel.
You guys put your you build your own walls here. I'm not gonna stop anybody.
All right, cool.
Go ahead, Andee. Number 2.
Okay, my number 2, I'm staying firmly in the punk rock world. And I think 77 is considered like the kind of ground zero year for punk being like a worldwide movement. In England, you had, you know, The Damned. The Damned was actually the first band to get their debut album in the shops. And then you had the Sex Pistols and the Clash's first album. With those bands, though, I tend to prefer some of their later work. In terms of Sex Pistols, I'm more of a Pill fan. I don't really sit around listening to Nevermind the Bollocks at home very much. It's a great album, though. I'm going to stay with New York City, and I'm going to pick the Ramones' Rocket to Russia, which is their 3rd album. So they're already well into, they're sort of well into their formula at this point, but it is, for my money, it's the best collection of tunes. I think it's really well recorded. You know, it's the original lineup. It's just got these indelible classic songs. Everybody knows Cretin Hop and Rockaway Beach. I'm calling from Rockaway Beach tonight, by the way. Teenage Lobotomy, Ramona, Sheena's a punk rocker. One of my favorite Ramones songs of all time is I Wanna Be Well. It's my favorite of the I Wanna songs. It's just such a, you know, it's a goofy, kind of happy, upbeat, typical Ramones vibe, but the lyrics are dark and there's sort of a desperate, you know, quality to just that sentiment. I want to be well. You know, daddy's broke, holy smoke, my future's bleak, ain't it neat? My least favorite song would be I Don't Care, which is maybe the laziest song. I mean, the title says it all. This song had to have taken no more than 30 seconds, I would say, to write. I don't care about that girl. I don't care about this world. I mean, that's the entire lyric for the whole song. So, but you know, it kind of has its goofy charm, I guess. What else can I say about Rocket to Russia? I think it's just the peak, you know. On the next album, Leave Home was before. Road to Ruin, their 4th album, I feel like the formula is starting to wear thin. The material's not as strong. And then they kind of start tinkering with the formula with end of the century and so on into the 80s. So that's my number 2, the Ramones, Rocket to Russia.
Great pick. Joe. Number 2.
Just Pontus. 1977 was just such a great year to be alive for me. I was cutting lawns, I was caddying, I was making good money, and I was going to the record store literally several times a week and buying all these albums. Pontus, my aunt worked at the bank that James Young went to, so I had an autographed copy of Grand Illusion.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
so
fantastic.
anyway, my number 3 is Cheap Trick in Color. The production's a little thin. Aside from that, the songwriting is incredible. The singing by Robin Zander is even more incredible. The album cover just blew my mind. You had the 2 cool dudes on the front and the 2 dorks in the back. It's just awesome. You got Hello There, which is just a great short song, which they open up with. 99% of the times they play live. Big Eyes, Downed. I Want You to Want Me, I know is a little poppy. I didn't like it at the time, but it grew on me. You're All Talk, All Caroline, Clock Strikes 10, Southern Girls, Come On, Come On. So Good to See You. The final song on the album, Robin Zander goes to another level where I think on that song, he's the greatest vocalist of all time. But yeah, what a great album. Besides the production, which I have issues with, the songwriting is just brilliant. And Robin Zander's singing is amazing. And Tom Peterson's bass playing, you realize, later on is just incredible on it as well. So that's my number 3.
Good pick, Joe. Thanks. Matt, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Songs from the Wood by Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull has a ton of amazing albums in the 70s. And, they started the decade really strong with Benefit and Aqualung and Thick as a Brick. Little inconsistency in the middle of the decade. And then they close it with their 3, kind of the trilogy of folk rock albums that starts with Songs from the Wood, and then Heavy Horses and Stormwatch. And of those 3, this is definitely my favorite. So lyrically, it's got kind of that Celtic-y pastoral vibe and theme to it. There's a lot of acoustic instrumentation, a lot of old instrumentation. There's like even medieval instrument percussion, but it's actually quite modern sounding. There's a lot of interesting electric guitar with a lot of reverse echo effects on it and things like that. The songs are short, but they're maintaining the progressive nature that Jethro Tull does so well. But in like these nice, compact, catchy songs. And unlike the next 2 albums, which are a little bit dark thematically, it's very whimsical. It kind of feels like these Celtic fairy myth type vibe to it all, which is really appealing to me. And then lastly, the part that I really love about it are the vocals. So this is kind of before Ian Anderson starts having some vocal troubles, and just the attention to detail to the vocal arrangements throughout it. There's no like straight single track vocal leads anywhere on the album. A lot of multi-tracking, whether it's doubling or adding harmonies and changing line by line kind of what those harmonies are. It's just really well put together. I still listen to this album all the time, and it's my number 2.
Very cool. John C., take us back to your 1977.
All right. So my next one, this one I have to thank my brother for. He played it a lot. It was definitely a favorite in my house at the time. Steve Miller, Book of Dreams. Gosh, so many good songs on this, and so many radio staples on this that you hear on the classic rock stations, the stations that you listen to for the retail stores when they have their little licensed music that you always hear. You're always hearing Jet Airliner, Jungle Love, Wintertime and Swing Town. I still play The Stake every now and then. I mean, that's just a great little da 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 da. That's just a good song. True Fine Love, nice little throwback, kind of a 50s, 60s style song. Babes in the Wood, nice, a lot of nice little instrumental pieces here. There's just so much on this album that just really stuck with me over these 45 years. And I still love this album. Still think it's a great album. Steve Miller's voice, I think he just was putting out. This was probably like the cream of the crop, in my opinion, of his output. So, Book of Dreams, Steve Miller.
Good pick. Christian, number 2.
All right. My number 2 is Scorpions, Taken by Force. With Uli John Roth as the guitarist. This is the last studio album with him. To me, this is peak Scorpions. My favorite era, my favorite album from this era. Just a ton of great songs. Starts with the classic opener, Steamrock Fever, with the jackhammer going on in the background. Wilbur in the Sky, phenomenal song. The version on Tokyo Tapes really brings it to life. Riot of Your Time's another great one. Got that kind of weird kind of disco beat, but it sounds really great. And then of course, The Sails of Charon, super influential to that kind of style. Very atmospheric. The riff is very kind of authoritative. And then of course, He's a Woman, She's a Man, that riff, also super heavy, incredible. I think my personal favorite is Your Light. Just a beautiful song, great album. So yeah, Scorpions taken by force.
Awesome pick. John, the Music Nut, you're next. Number 2.
Thank you. So Andee mentioned this band before, and I echo his sentiments about liking their later albums a little bit better. And back in 77, for a few years after, for many people, this was the only band that mattered, and it was The Clash, their self-titled debut. This was not released in the US until 79. It was 77 in the UK. When it came out in 79, they took some of the songs off of it and then replaced them with singles that were in the UK. And with this band, you had 2 great songwriters, and they were so talented for a band that was a punk band. All the songs are great. The bass lines from Paul Simonon were excellent. I think that added different dimension to them, as well as Mick Jones's backing vocals on the songs. Most of the songs are sung by Joe Strummer. You have some punk classics here, like Clash City Rockers, White Riot, London's Burning, Career Opportunities. They do a spirited, excellent version of Bobby Fuller 4's I Fought the Law. I think the Clash's version is better. And then you have some quasi-reggae tracks. My favorite track on the album is White Man and Hammersmith Valleys, as well as Police and Thieves. They didn't write Police and Thieves, but that's an excellent song. Other great songs, Gel Guitar Doors, and Janie Jones. But this is an album that I really love, and The Clash's debut is my number 2.
Awesome. Reed, take it away. Number 2.
Okay, so I talk a lot about this next guy. I've been obsessed with him for about 10 years. He did 2 albums in 1977, of which my favorite is Heroes by Mr. David Bowie. The other album, of course, being Low. I got a lot of stick on the last time we did favorite David Bowie albums because I said Low wasn't a very good album, and some people got really offended by that, but I stick by it. There's 2 songs on that album I like. It feels unfinished and experimental. You know, and David Bowie can experiment all he wants, but he actually has finished songs on this one, not just the title track, which is probably the greatest. But I think Beauty and the Beast is a great starter. He has a lot more completed ideas. His vocals are great. His lyrics are very interesting, I think, influenced by his time with Iggy Pop there in Berlin. And he even includes, there's a song, Sons of the Silent Age, which I'm really fond of. And I think it would have fit in much later in his career on Hours. And as much as David Bowie is constantly getting credit for reinventing himself, I think there's a very constant throughput in his music. And this is a good example of that. If you listen to this album and listen to Hours back to back, they're not a million miles different, except in production and musicality. Anyway, it also contains probably, I think, his greatest composition, being Heroes. And I love the fact that it includes Robert Fripp on guitar. He does a lot of really fantastic, angular, super quick guitar pieces in the background, none of which is necessary for the songs. So I think that's a pretty cool trick. Robert Fripp, he's quite an interesting person. So number 2, Heroes by David Bowie.
Pontus, take it away. What's your number 2?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the live album. Seconds Out by Genesis. This is side 4 of this record. Is my favorite Genesis moment of all time. It goes from Cinema Show with Bill Bruford on drums and Phil as well. And then they go into Dance on a Volcano and Los Angeles. and the jam and the groove they get on those tracks, man, you can understand that Chester Thompson, who was also on these tracks, they listened to Weather Report, it just, and SAP and all that, because it's so out there. And by the time, it's released at the same time as Nevermind the Bollocks, it's just fun to realize that, those records were playing at the same time. And I like Phil's singing on it. He's coming into his own. I love the version of I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe. I love the Fifth and the Firth version. I love the tracks from Squonk and Battery Assault Attack version that is in here, and Afterglow as well. So I think it's a great album. Supper's Ready is also working with him singing. So I think it's a beautiful album. It was one of my first ever Genesis experiences, and it's just a fantastic album. Seconds Out by Genesis.
All right. Now we're at our number one. So let's do this a little bit differently. Everybody pick just a couple of quick honorable mentions. Do your number one, and maybe do your plug at the end of your number one, and then I'll wrap it up when it gets back to me. So Ryan, couple quick honorable mentions. What's your number one? And if you have anything to plug, go for it.
All right. So my honorable mentions real quick. I'm gonna go with Damn Debut, Damn Damned. ELO, Out of the Blue, and Aerosmith, Draw the Line. Which kind of pained me that I couldn't choose that one as my number one, but there's a reason for that. So Pink Floyd Animals, just like, I probably wouldn't be on this show without this album, to be completely honest. Like, I remember being, I don't know, like 10, 11 years old, discovering through all my dad's CDs that he had in like a booklet, and coming across some of Pink Floyd's albums. I really loved Obscured by Clouds. I really loved Metal. I really loved The Wall. But the one that really resonated with me was Animals. And I didn't even know how much it would resonate with me as life went on. Because for 1977, we've been talking about punk music. This is like Pink Floyd's punk album. It's angry. It's anti-establishment. I mean, it's kind of going off of an Orwell story to talk about the government, basically. And it's just really intricately done, really chilling. The lyrics are powerful. They're cutting. They make you think, and the music is just brilliant too. You have your bookends of Pigs on the Wing, which are just kind of like gentle acoustic songs. They're really beautiful. You Own the Dogs, which is one of the greatest Pink Floyd songs of all time. I mean, it's super long. I think it's like 18 minutes long about. There's a lot of acoustic moments, great vocals throughout that entire one. Some of David Gilmour's best guitar solos of all time. And that end part, when like the electric guitars come in with that riff, and he's just talking about the man and stuff, it's just wild. Like it just blows me away. Pigs Three Different Ones is a super interesting song. I love all the synth lines on that one, on that do 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 do, and just like, another great vocal by Roger on that one. Just absolutely fantastic. Great guitar solos throughout it. A great groove to that one too. It has a bit of like a funky kind of groove to it at points, even though it's a very rock song. Sheep is fantastic. It's one of the more aggressive tracks on the album. The way it comes in to the vocals and the verse is just so brutal and like jarring. I don't know, the whole album's just absolutely fantastic. Like I said, this was huge for my music development. It's always been my favorite Pink Floyd album, along with Metal. And it's just, yeah, it's just like, as a guitarist, it was deeply influential to me. I would just spend hours learning those guitar solos, trying to get them down exactly like they are. Trying to, I mean, I felt the emotion that's needed to play those guitar solos, because that's really what they are. It's emotion, it's passion, even above technique. Even though David Gilmour is technically a great guitar player too, it's all about that passion there in his tone. Yeah, I can't say enough great things about this one. It's truly brilliant. It's my favorite album in 1977.
You want to tell us about your channel real quick?
Yeah, I have a couple of things I'll talk to you about. So I got YouTube channel, Ryan's Vinyl Destination. I've got Facebook page, Instagram page. On the YouTube channel, I've been doing a lot of collaboration videos with guys like John and Rand, Grant, etc. And we've been doing reviews. Rand and I have been doing a Genesis mini series. We've been talking about all their albums, and I know John's going to be joining us next week for an episode about Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, so make sure to check that out. And then also, like I said, check out the Facebook and Instagram. I got written reviews there, and I've also started doing written reviews on for Sea of Tranquility too, so make sure to check those out as well. And yeah.
Nice. Rand, a couple of honorable mentions, your number one, and if you got anything to plug.
Okay. A very obscure band from Virginia in 1977 just tore my head right off my neck. They're called Happy the Man. This is phenomenal musicianship. I mean, it's so over the top of what everybody else was doing. The Mini Moog synthesizer, it sounds like a guitar with a wah-wah pedal, but it's actually a Mini Moog. And what's amazing about this album is that the keyboard player who's doing that, Kit Watkins, ends up joining my second honorable mention 2 years later in Camel. And this is Rain Dances. And this is also a phenomenal album if you're into prog. I can't rave about this enough. Okay, so I wanted to do that real fast, but yeah, the connections are great. So before I said Gentle Giant opened for Yes, so my first and choice would be this. Going for the One by Yes, came out in July 1977, and it's got this kind of really cool flooded barn with a tree or something in Switzerland. I don't know, there's something like that, but this is a phenomenal album. Going for the One is the first time that we ever heard an electric steel guitar play through an entire song with no other kind of guitar there. And Turn of the Century is absolutely gorgeous. Parallels is insane rock with an organ that's being recorded 5 miles away by Rick Wakeman, and they're doing everything over the telephone, which is phenomenal for 1977. And the fourth song is Wonder Stories, which is really beautiful ballad. And the last song, Awaken, if you've never heard it, do yourself a favor and listen to Awaken. It's a spiritual experience. I've seen it done so many times on stage. I mean, I got to see the 8-piece band do it in 1991 2 times that year. And it will literally lift you right out of your seat. It's that good. It's so majestic, so intense. I love this album to death. Going for the One, and FYI, it's Martin Popoff's favorite Yes record.
Very cool.
And I wanted to, want me to plug myself?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, what Ryan said, we're doing the Genesis, talking about albums, and we're about to approach the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and go into 1974. We think of these things as time machines, because I've got the memories. I saw that band in 1974. So it's really interesting that I can, go back and relive that and discuss it with a different generation. It's really awesome, because I'm pushing 70, you guys. I'll be 70 in September. So, I feel really grateful that I'm doing what I'm doing. I love all this. I love all you guys. So anyways, I do this. Yeah, thanks. You're welcome. I get nervous. I get kind of like I trip over my words a little bit. I do this thing on my channel, Rand Kelly, that where I just create music. And I call it Take One. I haven't done anything in a while because I haven't been inspired, but I just got a Hofner bass, Paul McCartney's 61 reissue type bass. So I'm probably gonna start playing that a little bit and try to incorporate that in some of my videos. But I just turn these synthesizers on and let them go with all these automatic arpeggiations and things like that. And I just make up music on the spot. I don't rehearse it. I just create it and it's there. I can't redo it. It's not replayable. There's no way I could do that. So it's just a one-time thing. It's recorded and it's there. Boom, that's it. Take one. That's why it's called Take One. And Ryan and I are planning a new show here pretty soon. We're going to call it Rand and Ryan's Saucer Rock Show. And what we're going to do is talk about bands, especially in the 70s, that wrote about UFOs, like David Bowie and Elton John,
Nice.
Pink Floyd, and stuff like that. And we're going to discuss those. Like, it won't be a very long show, but we do want to appeal to the audience that's been wondering why were those songs written, and we can get people to comment in the comments. Once we get them up and stuff, it should be interesting to see what people have to say. Thank you very
All
much.
right, looking forward to it. Andy, couple honorable mentions, your number one, and anything to plug.
Okay. Well, I just had the idea. Maybe I'll play my honorable mentions. Can you hear this? Here we go.
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac Rumors.
Yeah.
Nice.
Saturday Night Fever. See here. Scorpions. How about this?
There you go.
That's good.
John Williams just called and says, knock that off.
Star Wars soundtrack came out that year. Little Sex Pistols. Oh, how about this?
Like the first time.
And of course,
I guess.
and one more.
Well, a lot of that's cutting out, Andy. It's hard to tell.
Okay, it was Aerosmith. So anyway, my number one is yeah, this one's already been covered. So I just want to say this album, I think Queen, people don't give them credit enough for being so weird. And there's so much weird stuff on this album. I think that the song We Will Rock You is really a strange recording. When you think about who this band was and what they were capable of and how brutally simple this song is, you know, the stomps, the claps, the bone dry vocal right in your face, and then this weird guitar solo that gets tacked on at the end, but they don't bring in the rest of the band. It's so strange. It's so kind of sonically sonically fearless. And I think there's some other instances on this album where there's just some crazy, like, pinned in the red recording values. I mean, you have Sheer Heart Attack, and it's got this instrumental section with this weird oscillating whistling noise that's going around, and it kind of melts into a, I don't know, it's a rototom solo. And it's just like this band is just trying everything and anything. I think that I really love the Roger Taylor songs on that album. I think Get Down, Make Love is really weird. I think the lyrics are bizarre. And they've got this noise-making psychedelic section in there where they're playing with the Eventide harmonizer. And it's just like, it's so unconservative, you know, what this band is doing at this point in their career. I love the John Taylor song, or the John Deacon songs, rather. I think Misfire, or not Misfire, what's the one on this that's Who Needs You, with that kind of, you know, that kind of Latin, you know, nylon string flavor to it. It's kind of like, it's lush in its orchestration, but it still sounds really small and intimate. I think My Melancholy Blues is an unheralded Freddie Mercury masterpiece that shows that this guy could do cocktail jazz on the piano with these amazing chord voicings that he just somehow learned how to play, along with everything else that he could do, his gospel chops and his classical kind of, kind of, grand dramatic flourishes that he could do in a song like We Are the Champions. So yeah, I would say that in my heart of hearts, because Queen was my first favorite band, that would be my number one. But yeah, honorable mentions, Thin Lizzy, Bad Reputation, and some of these other albums that have already been noted, Draw the Line, Farewell to Kings, Sin After Sin, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, etc. My plugs, I'm going on tour with Blondie next month. We're going to have Johnny Marr opening in the UK. And then in the US, we have The Damned opening for us. So if anybody that wants to come out in the UK or the US wants to get on the guest list, I'm not going to be able to hang out because our COVID restrictions are very strict. So, but I would be happy to give tickets to any of you guys. I've got, I got a handful of people I can comp in every city. So we'll do that. We'll sort that out later, but that's it for me. Queen, number one, news of the world.
Awesome. Thanks, Andee. Joe, number one, couple honorable mentions and anything to plug.
All right. So my honorable mentions, Angel on Earth as It Is in Heaven. It almost cracked my top three. Can You Feel It has one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. As I said in a previous episode, I'm a geek for Eddie Kramer. AC/DC, Let There Be Rock, UFO, Lights Out, Rush, Farewell to Kings, and Kiss Alive 2, just because of side 4. That's some of Kiss's best work, especially Rocket Ride and Larger Than Life. Just great stuff. But my number one, I changed my shirt. Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols. Incredible album. I listen to it all the time still. The songs ruminate in my head when I wait, like I'll be in the middle of the night. I'll have Problems or Anarchy in the UK or Pretty Vacant or EMI like in my head. It's just great stuff. This album blew my mind. It scared the shit out of me. I went to a Catholic school. I went to Catholic grammar school and high school. The art teacher would let us bring albums in to play during art class, and someone brought this in and Bodies came on, and she didn't bat an eye, so she wasn't paying attention. But what a brutal song that is. It's just a perfect album. They call it, I mean, they say it's punk, but it's just good kick-ass pub hard rock for me with basic guitar solos. I love it. Johnny Rotten's voice is just vicious. No pun intended, Sid Vicious. He doesn't play on the album, but it's just great. And it's great too because you got Holidays in the Sun, and you get Bodies, and you're like, what the hell am I listening to? You got No Feelings in Liar, but then Problems is just such a great kick-ass song. Then you have the two kind of hits, God Save the Queen. You have 17 and Anarchy in the UK, the popular songs. But EMI, Pretty Vacant. EMI is great. What a great song, ripping into the record industry, into the record company. So that's my number one. Sex Pistols, Nevermind the Bollocks.
Any plugs you want to make?
Nah, I got nothing.
All right, thanks, Joe. Matt, you're next. A couple honorable mentions, number one, and that plug if you got it.
So my honorable mentions, Rush, Farewell to the Kings, that's been mentioned several times, and then Spectres by Blue Oyster Cult. And it's what a great year to have those two not make my top three, two of my favorite albums of all time, but they didn't make my top three. And my number one is Television, Marquee Moon. So Television came out of the New York CBGB's, excellent, John, CBGB scene with, like, you know, Blondie, the Ramones, Talking Heads, but sounds like none of those bands, but very much sound like a New York band. And they've got two phenomenal guitarists, so Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, and they're playing this kind of jazz influence, very kind of jagged, angular solos, playing off each other, long solos. It's almost like a jam band type situation, but vocally it's more, I don't know what it is, but like new wave, post-punky kind of sounding to a very poetic lyrics. The jazz influence, though, it's not like the jazz rock fusion stuff that's going on. It's more like influenced by jazz, the same way like the MC5 was influenced by jazz. So it's got a very unique sound to it. It's very, the guitars are very dry. They're not very distorted at all, but just tons of great, interesting lead playing. And they're kind of part of the, I categorize like those two guitarists in this like alternate branch of guitar heroes that were, you know, not players who were on, you know, in guitar magazines. They weren't ones that really inspired a lot of guitarists in the future, but were in these sort of quirky, critically acclaimed bands, and more like, I guess, coming from like the Velvet Underground branch of the 60s instead of growing out of like the British guitar heroes, Page, Clapton, and Beck. So it's just like this different offshoot of guitar playing. And so people like Robert Quine and Jay Mascis and like D Boon and things like that. It's just like this totally other branch of just interesting guitar playing. And that's why I love this album so much. So Television, Marquee Moon's my number one.
Hey, Matt, I saw Television open for Peter Gabriel in 1977 in San Francisco.
Oh, Rand, I am very jealous. That's fantastic.
The middle band was Yesterday and Today.
Oh, jeez. Now that's a big
Too bad
Weird
Tim's not
going.
here.
One other thing that, you know, AC/DC came up before. I've noticed this weird lyrical connection with Television and AC/DC, because on the song Venus, they've got the line, fell right into the arms of Venus de Milo, which is sort of playing, you know, the Venus de Milo statue has no arms, right? So it's this like punny thing. And then, you know, AC/DC and Touch Too Much has, you know, she's got the body of Venus with arms. So you'd never put Television and AC/DC together, but they both kind of had the same lyric idea. I don't think Bon Scott was listening to Marquee Moon, though.
Anything to plug quick?
Nothing to plug.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. John, how about you? John Steve.
Okay. So for honorable mentions, stuff that I discovered came out in 1977 that I really liked. Obviously, Alan Parsons' Project I, Robot. My sister was a fan, and I know I listened to, you know, the title track, and of course, Wouldn't Want to Be Like You. But I never got to hear the rest of the album, not until much, much later. Of course, Ted Nugent with Cat Scratch Fever, Kansas, which we've mentioned already. Yes, with Going for the One, which I got to see the band back in 2013 do that in its entirety, and that was amazing. Saturday Night Fever, which Andee mentioned. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell was another one. That was a good one. But for me, as a 7-year-old kid, to take a phrase from Reed's number 3 and one of Joe's honorable mention, all right, love gone. Of course, I was going to be listening as a Kiss fan back in the day. Of course, I'm going to be listening to Kiss all the time. So, yeah, I mean, I Stole Your Love. Of course, yeah, Christine 16 hasn't aged very well. That's really not too good. I love Shock Me. I love that solo. Love the live solo. I liked Tomorrow and Tonight back in the day. Of course, the title track, I've actually been trying to really work on that that little guitar line that Ace does. I'm like trying to get my chops back. So I'm just trying to do that little, I've been doing that, you know, that line. I liked Hooligan. I always thought Hooligan was a good Peter song. Almost Human was a kind of an odd Gene song, but still good. Thank God my parents didn't listen to Plaster Caster and tell me what it was about back then, and I discovered it much, much later. And I actually liked the cover of Then and Then She Kissed Me. So I thought I thought it was a solid album for me. Kiss was my absolute heroes back in those days. So they were of course that was going to be my favorite from 1977. So another one I could have mentioned also is Al Di Meola's Elegant Gypsy. What a fantastic album that is as well. Wish I had heard that one in 77, but I think I was about 10 years, 15 years later on that one. But as far as anything to plug, I've got nothing coming up on my own channel. But I am doing I am doing the show with Ryan and Rand talking about the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. We'll be doing that soon. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to whenever we do the wrestling theme show, whenever that's going to be with Joe and Marco and probably Brett.
It's all about the game.
Yeah.
Hey, Brett.
There's a couple of other things I could be involved on, but I've got to still put some thought into. So, but that's pretty much it. That's all I got.
Thanks, John. Christian, number one.
All right. Honorable mentions. Most of these have been said. UFO, Lights Out, Thin Lizzy, Bad Reputation, Yellow, Out of the Blue, Foreigner, and then Billy Joel, The Stranger. This is a big part of my childhood, so I love that album. My number one. We talk about prog a lot on this channel, and I've tried to get into bands like Pink Floyd, Yes, Rush, Jethro Tull many times, and I will continue to try, but I don't think I have the patience or the ears for prog. So my claim to prog is, and I know this has been talked about already, but Six, The Grand Illusion, call it softcore prog. Six, they didn't sacrifice catchy melodies, guitar hooks. They didn't write any 20-minute songs. They just stuck to the rock radio recipe with that kind of prog tinge, and they were good at it. So yeah, this album was released, is their seventh album, released on the 7th of the 7th month, which is July of 1977. And it was, it started that kind of string of platinum albums for Styx. Second album with Tommy Shaw, just an incredible album from front to back. I love every single song. My favorite is definitely Miss America. That's my all-time favorite Styx song. I love that guitar riff to death. So a great album by Styx. Nothing to plug at the moment, but yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian.
We'll
John,
be
the music
discussing
next.
Come Sail Away, Christian.
What was that?
We will be discussing Come Sail Away on our new show.
Yeah, it's I never get tired of it. It's a great arrangement.
Sorry, Marco, I didn't mean to interrupt.
John, you're next.
Okay, thank you. My honorable mentions. Bob Marley, Exodus. There is a reggae album that plays like a greatest hits album. This is it. I love the Allman Brothers Band. At this point, they weren't together, but Greg Allman Band put out an album called Playing Up a Storm. This is an excellent album. He's still in fantastic voice here. Another one of my favorite bands is Little Feat, and they put out Time Loves a Hero this year. This is when they were going a little more fusion, and Paul Barrere and Bill Payne were writing more of the songs at this point. And last but certainly not least, this is another great album that I love, Iggy Pop, Lust for Life.
Yeah. Forgot to mention both. He made The Idiot and Lust for Life in the same year.
Yes, he did. That's correct.
Yeah.
But my favorite album from 77, and I'm glad it wasn't mentioned, I thought it was going to be mentioned, is Cheap Trick's self-titled debut. Like the band Little Feat, like the band Rush, another one of my favorites. Their first album was a little different than the rest of their catalog, and that's the same thing with Cheap Trick's debut. Here, their sound was more raw, more in your face. It wasn't really power pop yet. They were also writing about a lot of different things, like a pedophile, like suicide, like murder. As far as the songs, the only one they probably play live now is Hello Kitties. You still hear that live. They still open with that sometimes, but great songs. Daddy Should Have Stayed in High School is about pedophile. Oh Candy, which is about suicide. Hot Love and He's a Whore. They're almost punk in their delivery. Mandacello is a beautiful song. That's a fantastic vocal by Robin Zander on that one. Taxman, Mr. Thief, Cry Cry. Every song on here is very, very good. The first three albums I love to death, but this one is my favorite. And Cheap Trick's debut is my number one album from 1977. I have nothing to plug personally, but
John.
I just like to say, support your local music stores, support your mom and pops. This shirt I have on, this is Gallery of Sound. They have 2 stores in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Let me just move my mic out of the way. They have 2 stores in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. More music for your money. They also have a website that you can order music from as well. Free shipping on orders, $75 or more.
Hey, John.
Yes.
The fun fact, Nikki Sixx openly admits that Too Fast for Love is a total ripoff of He's a Whore. And I've seen Cheap Trick probably 30 times. The only time I've seen him play He's a Whore is when they opened up for Motley Crue.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Reed, how about you?
Joe?
All right. I don't have anything to plug, but before I get rolling on my final pick, I have to ask, Andee, do you travel with a disco ball, or was that included with the room?
I'm cat sitting right now, and the disco ball was included. I did have to bring the guitar though.
Okay. All right. Just wondering. You guys were you were making me nervous right there at the end. And everybody has covered everything that I might possibly use as an honorable mention. And my number one got talked about briefly. I was like, are they going to take my thunder? And it turns out no. So this is a very modern selection for me. When anytime prior to about, let's just be generous and say 2010, I would never have given this album a second listen, but now I'm obsessed with it. And that is Iggy Pop's The Idiot. As far as I'm concerned, this is the album where post-punk starts. 1977, punk was still a thing, although it was starting to become kind of more accepted and mainstream, which was the antithesis of punk, and post-punk was getting pretty weird. But Iggy Pop was there first. And you look at a lot of the production or anti-production values that went into post-punk, and some of the atonal singing and the non-melodic songs. And what I like about The Idiot over Lust for Life is an album of fairly normal songs. Now, they're Iggy Pop-ish songs, but they still have a much more normal structure. They have more melody. His vocal is listenable. The Idiot is performance art. You can listen to a song like China Girl, and I don't think he actually hits the tonal center one time during the performance of that song. He is all over it. And the impression that gives, it's a song about a man who's unhinged by his obsession with, I think it was a Vietnamese lover that he had. Don't quote me on that. But the performance of the vocal really sells the mindset of the song. A song like Night Clubbing, on anybody else, that would be a song about partying, right? But with Iggy Pop, it's plotting. And he's like, night clubbing, we're night club. And he's not happy about it, right? He's drunk and hauling his stupid ass from club to club, and things are not going well, but he's going to do it anyway. And I love that about the album. Every song is performance art. And then he's such a weird guy, and his lyrics are so weird. You get down to like Mass Production, and he's talking to this woman and going, hey, can you give me a phone number of a woman who's kind of like you, but not, because I'm into mass production. Who writes those lyrics, man? That is so far out there. And I came into this album because of my obsession with David Bowie, but frankly, other than his production, I don't know that Bowie was all that important, except for using his backing band. Now, Carlos Alomar is all over both albums, and he is absolutely vital to that sound. But I heard an interview with Carlos Alomar where he was saying, hey, the performances that we put down, that was Iggy Pop coming to me and saying, when we do night clubbing, I need it to have this dragging energy. I don't want it to be an up-tempo song. So it's very much Iggy's thing, even though David Bowie was involved with stuff. If you look at the credits, it's got David Bowie over like 7 or 8 instruments for every song. But it's just an amazing album. And like I said, to me, it's not punk, although the Stooges influenced punk. And then if you look at post-punks, they all list The Idiot as a huge influence. And it's a fantastic album.
Thanks, Reed. Anything to plug?
Nope.
All right, Pontus, take us home.
All right. My honorable mentions, how about Klaatu? Hope. The second Klaatu album. Love that album. It's a prog pop, like Alan Parsons' Project. Lots of great album for your show there with the Sorcerers. And
Right, it was produced by Terry Brown.
Yeah, great. And we had this. This is Consequence by Lol Cream and Kevin Godley. Their the album that split 10cc. A triple album, I think it was, about with some theatre in it. And we have AC/DC chorus. And we have, I love the Yes album as well. I think this is Yes getting back to basics, this is their punk album in a sense, because they're using real instruments. They're using church organs. They're using pianos. They're using acoustic guitars and things like that, and even a harp in the middle. Here's another one. Anthony Phillips, his first solo album, The Geese and the Ghost. A lovely, lovely folk album with a lot of great playing. Half Genesis is here. Of course, not a certain keyboardist, but you have Phil is here, and Mike Rutherford has written a lot of it. They wrote it together. And I think John Hackett is on here, actually. Not Steve, but John. And it's just a fantastic album. But my favorite album has been mentioned, but I have to mention it again. It is Songs from the Wood by Jethro Tull. And just to show it, I do have the box set. I bought it when it came out. This is so important to me. This album introduced me to folk music, in a sense, British folk music. And just a beautiful album, as someone else said. It just, Ian Anderson was given a book about British folklore at Christmas in 1975. And that inspired him to write this album, because that's the theme of the album. It's the folk tales. So you have Jack and Green, you have songs about the Velvet Green, you have Hunting Girl, a lot of those stories and things like that. And it's so rocking, and it's a prog album, and it's a folk album, and it's so well produced. It's so organized in the sense that it flows very quickly. and all the songs are different from each other. There's a difference between Hunting Girl and Pibroch, Cup in Hand. And you're still in this glorious band, which is just playing in all cylinders at this fantastic folk album, which is really a rock album. And also back to basics here, back to folk basics instead of punk basics, you know? But it's like, wow, it's just a fantastic album, I think. And I have nothing to plug, so I thought I'd talk about an album that should have been released in 1977, but wasn't, because according to the artist, the Warner Brothers sucked. And this is Leather. This is what should have been released. The 4 albums set by Frank Zappa. I think it was a test pressing was done in September, but nothing happened. He took it to a radio station, played it, people taped it. It's Zappa's all over the place. It's sort of magnum opus that never was. It shows all the things he could do at that point. It's recordings from 1974 to 1976. And it had all those musicians on it. And it goes from jazz to rock to classical music to phony tales about stuff. And it's just a horrendous album. All the music came out on other records later on. I think it's 5 records that these material is on. In 1996, they released it as intended. And it's a tour de force of Frank in 77. But it never came out that way during his lifetime. But it was supposed, you know, it could have changed so much, but it wasn't. So I have nothing to plug. I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you, Pontus. So I'll do my final plug. Thanks everybody for showing up tonight. This was an awesome chat, awesome picks. 1977 had a lot of albums, and there were some that people didn't even have on their list. So there's a lot of good stuff from the 70s, 1977. I think we'll be doing this in future months and future chats in just different years. So I'm looking forward to the picks for those years. Thanks everybody for coming out. If you want to join these chats, join us over at Patreon. We have a Ko-Fi, we got TeePublic in the description, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Night, everyone.
Good night.